Good morning, everyone. Don't you love that song? Just so you know, that is my favorite song. Gets me fired up to worship the Lord. We've had an amazing week this week. Of course, Victor got baptized on Wednesday. He's going to be introduced at the end of the service here today. But it was so great to see his change. His heart, it was just an emotional time. Family was there. I like to see that stuff. That's awesome stuff. Ileana is getting baptized today. She's a teen. We're very proud of her. She's made great strides. It's always amazing to see how the cross can change hearts and lives. Of course, we had the great banquet. Now, I don't know about you, but I thought it was awesome. We have some talented people here. I thought Henry did a great job. I'm amazed. When Henry first came to the church, he couldn't even look at you in the eye. I don't know if you know that. He'd just keep his eyes down and he'd be like this. And here he is, quoting this thing from Nat Turner. It is amazing to see his heart. I mean, he was in it. It was like he was in his realm, that kind of thing. Of course, Jesse with the violin. Jesse, we do have some weddings coming up, so hopefully Sammy and Frida with that whole thing, the song and all that. Of course, Juan and Betty said they're sick of the song with all the practicing going on at home, that kind of thing. But you got to do that, right? Got to do it. And then, there was that staff video. I thought that you would want to know what goes on at staff meetings, And although I did not know about what Chris Wooden was trying to do there, taking over the church or something like that, we're going to talk. I so appreciate Dom putting that thing together, and Dustin, coming up with the lines. And actually, the staff kind of helped out. We came up with all sorts of crazy ideas. There's a lot that was cut out. There should be a part 2. So, and then we had the band play. That was awesome. A lot of great things going on. The food. The food was amazing. And, the campus guys, it was like piranha up there. But, So, I love it. Today, of course, is the Mercy Blood Drive, so people will be getting up, walking out, doing that thing. They're going to be setting it up in the far right-hand corner in the back. I know that wasn't mentioned. So, anyways, a lot of great things going on. Of course, we talked about Chris Broom coming here on Wednesday. He's really going to meet the people going to New York on this planting. It's not really a planting, it's already planted. But what they want to do is create that pillar church in New York. And so he's pulling all of his resources. Of course, he and I have a relationship. And of course, Chicago is known for sending people up. They're able to raise people up, send them out. That's an awesome thing, but it's challenging. And I counted up, I thought, okay, how many people is that in the last 7.5 years? It's 64 people we'll have sent out. And for a church that's a little over 200, that's pretty amazing. That's like, a third or a quarter or something like that. That's imagine if those people had still been here, but then we wouldn't have the world impact because we're in an international church, right? International Christian church. I thought I'd share that. Why? Well, we're fulfilling the Great Commission, right? Go and make disciples of what? Very good. Now, I thought, it really is amazing. You get these people, you study the Bible with them, and you've been through it. You move their heart, you get them broken before the cross, and they do radical things, changes for God. Yeah. And so it's a conversion of the heart. That's what we want. Yeah. But the most incredible thing is to continue to keep that heart. Yeah. And I thought, why is it that so many people are willing to drop everything and go on these mission teams? What would cause people to do that? You're uprooting your home. It's a financial challenge because you're having to give up your job, go find another job. You're literally moving somewhere. I don't know if most of those people have never been to New York. That's a big deal. That's a faith thing, right? And so what would cause people to do that? And I thought, you know what? Because they get it. They understand the Great Commission. They understand that we are a worldwide movement. We're working together as a team to change the world. Our ceiling isn't the church here. Our ceiling isn't Chicago, it's the world. Because that was God's vision, right? And so it's a tearing of hearts again. We got to send people out, people we've gone to know and love, but it's what we do. And really, when you think about it, in the world, that's such a rare thing. You tell people, I'm just going, they're like, are you kidding me? What are you doing? And a lot of people just can't fathom that mentality, that we would do that. And they're challenged by it, and it's pretty radical. Why? Because people in the world are just kind of consumed with their world. If you talk to them, you know what they're consumed by. They'll let you know, right? They're caught up in their jobs. They're caught up in their homes, their problems, their relationships. And usually it's amazing when we do hear people who talk about things that are sacrificial. And examples in the world. And it's such a shock to us. You know, you get the 9/11 thing, right? And you think, wow, you know, you had all these firefighters rushing back in the buildings knowing that this is probably death for me. And you're moved by that, right? And you think about these hurricanes that have hit. And isn't it amazing the stories we hear where people sacrifice their lives to rescue people? Yeah. But then what happens? People lose that focus. They lose that. As a disciple, we cannot. I remember a few years ago, Barb and I had a block party. You know, yeah, I know. Get to know your neighbor. And we had a block party, and we invited all our neighbors, and it was packed. It was awesome. But what was very bizarre was we would be talking to people, and they didn't know each other. And they'd say, well, where do you live? Oh, I live in this house. Well, I live 4 houses down. How long you been there? 6 years. How long you been there? 4 years. And you've never met? And it shows me that people are not engaged in relationships. They're in their world, and they go here and there and nothing in between. And then they wonder why they're so lonely. And it's like, whoa. Let alone be in each other's hearts where they feel their pain. They're oblivious. And now we've got texting. We don't even have to look around. You just walk into things, right? There's just no engaging, and this is where our world has gone. People just don't see the pain. Then you go to work and you have these really deep conversations. The Super Bowl, right? They share about how the Seahawks are going to win the Super Bowl. That's a prediction here. Okay. Talk about the TV programs, right? The weather, the snow, the 40-some car pileup. Did you guys hear about that? 40 what? 46 cars piled up on the interstate in Indiana. I think three people died from it this week. National events. And then all of a sudden, you hear about somebody who commits suicide that you knew. Have you had that happen? And you feel like, wow, how did I not know that? What was going on? How did that go right over my head? And it hits us, but then a few weeks later, we're back to normal. We become oblivious. So the conviction doesn't last. The title of the lesson today is A Heart for the People. How does God have a heart for the people? How do we get that heart? We can get there, but how do we stay there? Let's look at Hosea chapter 3. Old Testament, I know. Getting radical here. Hosea.
Come on, Jay.
Now let me give you a little history. You guys like history? Book of Hosea was written before King Jeroboam II, before he died in 753 BC. So this is written over 700 years before Jesus came on the scene. And it was just shortly before the fall of Samaria. He was a citizen of the northern kingdom. So if you know anything about the Israelites, you know that the kingdom was divided. All right, that there was this rift, and half of them were in the northern kingdom, half in the south, and they both end up being taken over by the Babylonians and the Assyrians. Okay, but look what happens here. Now this is before that. Look what happens, chapter 3, verse 1. Just a little bit more history here before I read this. Hosea is given a charge by God to marry an adulterous woman. He's a prophet, so God says, I want you to marry an adulterous woman, and I want you to love her. I want you to give your heart to her. All right, now imagine how painful that is. So he does this, he loves her, she gives him 3 children, and then she takes off. And she takes off not only committing adultery, but she becomes a prostitute. Okay? She becomes a prostitute. And look what happens, chapter 3, verse 1. The Lord said to me, go show your love to your wife again. Though she is loved by another and is an adulteress, love her as the Lord loves the Israelites. Though they turn to other gods and love the sacred raisin cakes. So I bought her for 15 shekels of silver and about a homer of an lethek of barley. Then I told her, you are to live with me many days. You must not be a prostitute or be intimate with any man, and I will live with you. Now this is kind of an amazing story. God says, go back, go get her. So what does he do? She is now in captivity. She's a slave. She's been sold into slavery. She's a prostitute, and he goes back and he purchases her. All right, now this is pretty intense. God is calling him to love her. Can you imagine this conversation? Okay, I'll have you come back, but you can't be a prostitute anymore, okay? You can't be an adulteress anymore. How many people do you think would do that? Anybody? Can you imagine the repercussions of this in your home? What about the kids? What happened to the kids? Does she have a lot of love for the kids? Takes off. Imagine what the neighbors are thinking. And you got to be able to say, oh, because God has commanded me to love her. It's like, what are you doing? Now, I looked up, figured out how much she cost him. You know, the silver and all that, the stuff there, the bushels of stuff. And it comes out to about $200. And what that does is it shows you how much other people put value into her. You're only worth about $200. Now imagine how she's feeling. And imagine her mindset of, you are willing to take me back? And God says, listen, I want you to understand something. In chapter 3, he says, love her as the Lord loves the Israelites, though they turn to other gods. What's going on here? I believe God is saying, listen, Hosea, I want you to know how I feel. I want you to get a heart for the people. This is how people are treating me. They come to me, but then they have their other gods, and they begin to worship and bow down to them. Does God feel abused? You bet he does. And people treat God as if he's this great big punching bag in the sky. We could just abuse you, God, and we're not going to worry about it. Have you ever felt that way? Abused? Not a very good feeling, is it? Have you ever witnessed being cheated on? Maybe adultery? That's not a lot of fun. And God says, listen, you're breaking my heart. Hosea, feel what I feel, now go preach to him. And see, we got to get God's heart so that we can preach to his children to rescue them. And see, a lot of people go after foreign gods. They come to Jesus, and Jesus is Lord. But then what happens? They go back to their old life. And once again, we abuse God. And see, we got to think hard and long. Are we one of those people? Look at chapter 11, verse 1. Look what ends up happening. Chapter 11, verse 1. When Israel was a child, I loved him. And out of Egypt I called my son. But the more I called Israel, the further they went from me. They sacrificed to the Baals, and they burned incense to images. It was I who taught Ephraim to walk, taking them by the arms. But they did not realize it was I who healed them. I led them with cords of human kindness and with ties of love. I lifted the yoke from their neck and bent down to feed them. Will they not return to Egypt, and will not Assyria rule over them because they refuse to repent? Swords will flash in their cities, will destroy the bars of their gates, and put an end to their plans. My people are determined to turn from me. Even if they call the Most High, he will by no means exalt them. How can I give you up, Ephraim? How can I hand you over, Israel? How can I treat you like Admah? How can I make you like Zeboim? My heart is changed within me. All my compassion is aroused. I will not carry out my fierce anger, nor will I turn and devastate Ephraim. For I am God and not man, the Holy One among you. I will not come in wrath. They will follow the Lord. He will roar like a lion. When he roars, his children will come trembling from the west. They will come trembling like birds from Egypt, like doves from Assyria. I will settle them in their homes, declares the Lord. Wow, there's a lot of heart in this from God. He says, listen, I love you.
Come on, Jay.
I love you. I went after you, and the more I go after you, the more you run from me. Why? Why are you treating me like this? You went to worship other things. He says, you don't realize, I taught you like a parent with a child. You have any parents in here? Yeah. Teaching and training. Why? So they can be awesome. You want your kids to do well. Right. I healed you. He says, don't you realize I healed you? Like a parent, once again, with a child, sitting at the bedside, trying to help them through the pain and the suffering. And then later on, the emotional pain and the suffering, when the world begins to trash them. And you feel what they feel intensely. And God is saying, this is how I feel about you. He says, I led you with cords of human kindness, with ties of love. He says, I am attached to you. I feel what you feel. How do we get this heart? How do we begin to go there? He says, I took the pressure off of you. I freed you up from guilt and fear and all sorts of stuff. I want you to be free. I want you to love life. He says, I bent down to help you. I went into your world. And eventually he sends Jesus. And what do they do to Jesus? What did we do to Jesus? We abuse him, once again, to the point of death. And you think, what has God got to do to prove that he loves us? To what extent is he going so that we can understand? We can bond and help people go where they're at, rescue them out of there. He says, you are determined to leave. He says, but I can't give you up. He says, all my compassion is aroused. He says, I'm ticked off. You've hurt me. But I'm not going to quit. I refuse to give in to my wrath and my anger. He says, I am God. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
All that we do. Amazing to see God's heart for his people. Yeah. Now, the challenge for us is, how much abuse will you take before you quit on people? How much are you saying, enough? I've had it. Well, wherever that is your love level. That is where you're going to go. Now, does God discipline his children? Absolutely. We're not talking about that. It's not like he's just, I'm going to let you wedge out. No, there's a discipline that comes. There is a result from our sin. Nobody gets unscathed, but we do it to ourselves. Where is your love level? Now, the most amazing thing at the end here, God says, you know what? They will follow me. And it shows God's faithfulness. I believe that if I continue to love, they will respond. And that's got to be our faith. A lot of times we don't share our faith because we've quit. I give my heart to these people and they just shove it in my face. Well, are you doing it for you or for them? And a lot of times we give up because we don't want to suffer anymore. It's like, here, hit me. Okay, hit me again. And you think, I need that like I need another hole in the head, you know? But that's the world we live in. People don't trust us. They think you're out for something. And see, we got to push past that. That's called love. We got to go into their world. We got to feel what they feel, bend down, go where they're at, feel their pain, and inspire them out of it because someone did it for us. So what does God got to do to get our heart there? How do we get here? My assumption is that's what we want to do. My assumption is, for the most part, that is the heart of the church because we're sending out people and people are sharing their faith and people are coming around, but how do we stay there? It's easy to get distracted. How do we continue to get our heart where it's like this? People are suffering, and it's easy to turn a blind eye. Look in Ezekiel chapter 9. Ezekiel chapter 9.
Come on.
So how do we get there?
Preach it.
Point number one, you got to get a conviction.
Amen.
Boy, Jay, you're pretty heavy, aren't you? I just want the fluffy, good feeling stuff. Give me a hug. Don't challenge my heart. Well, we got to get serious. We got to see the seriousness of this. And this passage is going to help us. Verse 1. Then I heard him call out in a loud voice, "Bring the guards of the city here, each with a weapon in his hand." And I saw 6 men coming from the direction of the upper gate, which faces north, each with a deadly weapon in his hand. With them was a man clothed in linen, who had a writing kit at his side. They came in and stood beside the bronze altar. Now the glory of the God of Israel went up from above the cherubim, where it had been, and moved to the threshold of the temple. Then the Lord called to the man clothed in linen, who had the writing kit at his side, and he said to him, "Go throughout the city of Jerusalem and put a mark on the foreheads of those who grieve and lament over all the detestable things that are done in it." As I listened, he said to the others, "Follow him through the city and kill, without showing pity or compassion. Slaughter old men, young men, maidens, women, and children. But do not touch anyone who has the mark. Begin at my sanctuary." So they began with the elders who were in front of the temple. Then he said to them, "Defile the temple and fill the courts with the slain. Go!" So he went out and began killing throughout the city. While they were killing and I was left alone, I fell face down, crying out, "Sovereign Lord, are you going to destroy the entire remnant of Israel in this outpouring of your wrath on Jerusalem?" He answered me, "The sin of the house of Israel and Judah is exceedingly great. The land is full of bloodshed and the city is full of injustice. They say the Lord has forsaken the land. The Lord does not see. So I will not look on them with pity or spare them, but I will bring down on their heads what they have done." Then the man in linen with the writing kit at his side brought back word saying, "I have done as you have commanded." Wow, intense little passage there. We got to look at this now. Wait a minute, Jay, you just got done reading a passage that said, God's not going to respond in wrath, and God's not going to, what's this? This doesn't make sense. Is this the same God that we were talking about?
Come on.
Well, let's look at what he's saying here. Well, how did people receive the mark on their forehead? They grieved and lamented over what was going on around them. And the rest were slaughtered. What does that say? God is incensed, and he will not tolerate when people don't care. That they can have a blind eye to the suffering around them.
Come on, Jay.
That's pretty intense. Here's the challenging question. Would you have made it? Would you have been slaughtered? Do you grieve and lament over what's going on in Chicago? And he says, start with the leadership. Wow. Why? Because the leaders led them into this. Because they don't care, the people don't care. Question is, where are we leading people? Are we leading them to God or not? And we got to have a conviction. Question is, what would you have done? Does it bother you that what's going on in Chicago is going on? Does it bother you? But does it bother you enough to do something? That's the acid test. We got to take it from it bothers me to I'm doing something about it. We are the tool in God's hands. Make no mistake, it'll be brought up. World War II, Hitler was wiping out the Jews, right? And he had these concentration camps where he was slaughtering people. A lot of suffering and pain. And the question was, what about the German people? Why didn't they do something about it? Why did they put on a blinder to what's going on? And Hitler had built them up. You are the people, the Third Reich. You're powerful. You're amazing. And they bought into it because they wanted to hear it. They wanted to hear it. But they couldn't escape the little things they heard or saw. And they would put a blind eye to the pain and the suffering around them. And so when they were taken over, they were asked, why didn't you do something? Oh, we didn't know. Oh, you didn't know. And you know what they did is they took the people, the average German, and they made him go into the concentration camps to clean it up. That's pretty intense. And then they said, now you know. And it's amazing because we can get so hardened by the pain that's going on. You know, there's this program that's been on TV, okay? I can't remember what the title of it is, What Would You Do, or something like that. And they would set it up where the people would be in a restaurant, and they'd be talking, and the guy'd be saying something abusive, and then they film the people around him. What are they going to do? Are they going to do something? You know, maybe there's a slap, or there's, I don't know. But it is amazing to see how much people would tolerate. But the people who did something, then they'd get in there and interview them. And the question is, you always think, what would I have done if I were standing there? You know, 2013 has been a banner year for Chicago. 415 murders instead of 506 for the year. The year before, 2012, we had 506. So we can get fired up about that, right? You know, those 415 murders, only 126 were solved. Yeah. This week, a girl was stabbed to death 40 times. It was actually, they said 40, they said there was just too many stab wounds to count. She was 11 years old. And finally, the half-sister confessed to doing it. Stabbed her half-sister to death. And every time, she confessed this, every time I stabbed her, I would tell her why. You didn't acknowledge that I did the dishes for you. Boom. It's like, holy cow. The hatred that must have been there. Now, this wasn't in the inner city, guys. This was in Mundelein. I think it was Mundelein. That's in a good neighborhood. It's not just here in the inner city. It's everywhere. And there's pain and suffering going on. What would take the girl to get to that point? Do we know what's going on? I appreciate the teen ministry here getting in and rescuing the teens.
Amen.
And just kind of calling them out. Rescuing them before they really scar their lives. I wish somebody had gotten in my life. I did enough scarring as a teenager, college student. But it's putting people in that battleground. Teens need to be rescued. College students need to be rescued. We need to be rescued all the time. Look in Matthew chapter 25. Do we have a heart for the people?
Come on, Jay.
You guys had enough? Okay, all right. Matthew 25, verse 31. Another intense passage, guys. When the Son of Man comes in his glory, and all the angels with him, he will sit on his throne in heavenly glory. All the nations will be gathered before him, and he will separate the people one from another as a shepherd separates the sheep from the goats. He will put the sheep on his right and the goats on his left. Then the king will say to those on his right, "Come, you who are blessed by my Father. Take your inheritance, the kingdom prepared for you since the creation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me in. I needed clothes, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you looked after me. I was in prison, and you came to visit me." Then the righteous will answer him, "Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you something to drink? When did we see you a stranger and invite you in, or needing clothes and clothe you? When did we see you sick or in prison and go to visit you?" The king will reply, "I tell you the truth, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers of mine, you did for me." Then he will say to those on his left, "Depart from me, you are cursed, into the eternal fire prepared for the devil and the angels. For I was hungry, and you gave me nothing to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me nothing to drink. I was a stranger, and you did not invite me in. I needed clothes, and you did not clothe me. I was sick and in prison, and you did not look after me." They also will answer, "Lord, when did we see you hungry or thirsty or a stranger or needing clothes or sick or in prison and did not help you?" He will reply, "I tell you the truth, whatever you did not do for one of the least of these, you did not do for me." Then they will go away to eternal punishment, but the righteous to eternal life. Now, this is one of those passages that you read and you can feel awesome, or you can feel, "Oh, baby, I'm in trouble." Jay, I want to hear the encouragement. Well, maybe this is an encouragement, but maybe not. What an intense passage, but it's the reality. It's how Jesus felt. By what standard does he bring to the table, whether you make it or not? By your love for those around you. Do you think God is serious about this? I do. We need to get serious about it. We got to take it to another level. The acid test. When is the last time you did these things? When's the last time you fed the hungry? And the campus students are going, "Amen, come on, bring it on. I'm hungry. Feed me." Okay. It's not what I think he was talking about. Thirsty. Gave him a drink. A stranger, and you invited him into the house. Well, what if they rob me? What if they attack me? Is that what you're going to say on Judgment Day? It's called hospitality. When you have a Bible talk, don't you invite strangers in? Hopefully you do. How are you going to reach out to them? You know, Barb and I had many Bible talks in our home, and we were robbed. People would steal stuff out of our house. So what do? Stop? Are we more into the things that they stole, or are we more into rescuing them? And looking at, wow, what's going on in their life that they would stoop to that level? What do you value more? This is what we're talking about. The big picture. And we can shut down, I'm never going to do it again. Are we focused on them or ourselves? Did you give someone clothes? Yeah, I had a pair of jeans and I was going to throw them out, but I gave it to this person. Is that the heart? Is that what they're talking about here? Taking care of the sick. When's the last time you went over and you made a meal and you got in there? Now, I appreciate the church. It's amazing. You know, Sandy broke her arm in numerous places. And I appreciate the women involved, Sharon getting in there, Eileen, Kathy, just a number of people going out to help her out. That's the way it ought to be. And I appreciate the love we have for the family. I think of Lamar and people going over there and helping Lamar out. He's sick. But do we do that for people outside the church, where they may never, ever respond to you? And then the question is, why are you doing it? Is it for what you can get out of it? Or are you doing it for Jesus? Because that's what he's saying. Whatever you did for them, you're doing it for me. Well, I'm so burned out, I keep giving to people, and they keep shoving it in my face. Well, why are you doing it then? Is it a self-focused? Is it so you can feel good about yourself? Or is it because you love God and you love his children? Then he talks about prison. When's the last time you went to visit someone in prison? We know people who know people. Are we afraid to engage in that? Now, maybe you're the other extreme. Well, I do all these things and I don't feel good about it. Well, why, again, do you do it? If the motive isn't right, you're still not going to be happy. And it's all about God. You got to love the people because God does. They're his children. Do you see the needs and do nothing? Point number 2. Let's get a vision. How are we going to get there? We've got to have a conviction, but we've got to have a vision. Look in Matthew 9. And this is a common passage, but very apropos. Matthew 9, verse 35. So Jesus went through all the towns and villages, teaching in their synagogues, preaching the good news in the kingdom, healing every disease and sickness. When he saw the crowds, he had compassion on them because they were harassed and helpless, like sheep without a shepherd. Then he said to his disciples, the harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. Ask the Lord of the harvest, therefore, to send out workers into his harvest field. What did Jesus see in the people? They were harassed and they were helpless. He didn't focus on how selfish they were, because there are selfish people, and how they abused him. Imagine you're Jesus and you're healing people. You heal a few people, what happens? You get all these people coming, hey, this guy can heal people. And all you get are sick and diseased people touching you. Imagine that's your day. And they're just pulling power out of you, draining you. And you have a mission. You got to go. And these people, they're just in the way. They're so selfish. Get away from me. Is that what he did? No. He healed people because that's who he was. Did he preach to them before? Did he say, no, you got to hear this lesson, and then I'll heal you? See if you're worthy of it. Is that what he did? No? You know, a lot of times we do that. We study the Bible with people, and we just ram them through studies. Oh, they got to get saved. And they have all these needs. They have all this pain and suffering where we don't attend to that. We just try to get them baptized, get them saved. That's just wrong. A lot of times I'll study with a married couple, and there'll be a tendency, where I'll see, it's going that way, but anything you say to them doesn't matter. It goes over their head. Why? Because they're thinking about their marriage. I don't care about another doctrine. I don't care about that. I want to rescue my marriage. I want to get off of drugs. I want to do that. And we don't meet the needs, and then we wonder why. I don't know why they didn't respond to the cross. And see, we gotta understand that they're suffering. When someone's suffering, they're not thinking about what you're talking about. You can heal them, they're all eyes and all ears. And Jesus says the harvest is plentiful. Man, there's a lot of needs out there. There's a lot of suffering. What are you doing? And we miss the big picture because our hearts aren't there. He says the workers are few. Why? Because it takes a lot. It takes a lot to keep giving. People will abuse you. Look in 1 John chapter 3. Are you guys convicted? I'll tell you, it's hard to write these things up. You're just, oh my Lord. Man. 1 John chapter 3. We got to get people to see God. If they're focused on all their problems, they won't get it. The only way they're going to get it is if you act out what love is. 1 John chapter 3, verse 16. This is how we know what love is. Jesus Christ laid down his life for us, and we ought to lay down our lives for our brothers. If anyone has material possessions and sees his brother in need but has no pity on him, how can the love of God be in him? Dear children, let us not love with words or tongue, but with actions and in truth. This then is how we know that we belong to the truth, and how we set our hearts at rest in his presence whenever our hearts condemn us. For God is greater than our hearts, and he knows everything. Jesus came as an example to show us this is what love is. It's sacrifice. If you want the biblical definition of love, this is it. Don't tell me you love me, show me you love me. Jesus set the bar high. Are you willing to suffer to that level? Look in chapter 4.
Come on.
Verse 19. We love because he loved us first. He first loved us. If anyone says, I love God, yet hates his brother, he's a liar. For anyone who does not love his brother whom he has seen cannot love God whom he has not seen. And he has given us his command. Whoever loves God must also love his brother. Everyone who believes that Jesus the Christ is born of God, and everyone who loves the Father loves his child as well. This is how we know that we love the children of God, by loving God and carrying out his commands. This is love for God, to obey his commands, and his commands are not burdensome. For everyone born of God overcomes the world. He begins by saying, listen, this is what love is. I've shown you. I showed you. We love because he first loved us. You can't hate people and love God. That's his children. If you come over to my household and you tell me you hate my daughter, I'm not going to feel all warm and fuzzy about you. And neither does God. God says, I died for him, and you hate him. That's pretty intense. And he says, this is how we know that we love the children of God, by loving God. Loving God means to love people. And he says it's not a burden to love people, not if your heart is right. And sometimes we feel that way because we're so selfish. I appreciate the people who've loved me. Man, I was a mess. People got in my heart, challenged me, held my hand to the fire. I was a prideful dog. I was so stinking prideful. I was stubborn. I know none of you can relate with this. I was stubborn. I pointed the finger at everybody else. It's all their fault. And people had to be patient with me and constantly love me through it. They did not give up. And I was a hard nut to crack. But finally I did. It changed my life. And because someone did it for me, I'm going to do it for you. Not just them, but Jesus did it. We need to engage our hearts. We need to have a heart for the people. God says, my children are harassed and they're helpless. They don't know what they're doing. And it bothers God when we turn a blind eye. Now, Mother Teresa, she worked with much poverty in India and all over the world, has a quote here. He says, we think sometimes that poverty is only being hungry, naked, and homeless. The poverty of being unwanted, unloved, and cared for is the greatest poverty. We must start in our own homes to remedy this kind of poverty. I'm going to close with a challenge. You know, the church here does many great acts of service. It's amazing. Joe was telling me, you know, we have this blood drive thing going on, right? And usually the Red Cross, when somebody says we're going to have all these people, they usually don't. And Joe said to me, you know, it usually takes, and then we find this all over the world, it usually takes a few times before they believe we're the real deal. We're serious about it. But it's true that way. You know, the church does great things. When we say we're going to have 100 people somewhere, we do. We rally the troops, we go after it, and that's exceedingly honorable. And you know, I'll put you guys up against anybody. You guys are amazing. But I want to take this to another level. All right? I don't want it to be just acts of service. I want it to become who we are. Okay, so this week when you share your faith, not if, but when you share your faith, I don't want you just to invite people to church. I don't want you to do that. I want you to share your heart. I want you to share what you believe. I want you to share your home, your time, your heart, your money, whatever it takes so that we can have that maturity, that we can rescue people. And it can only happen if we have a great conviction and if we have great vision. Amen.